The overall outlook for the supply chain industry this year remains challenging. That's according to Container xChange, and I'm joined by its CEO and co-founder, Christian Roeloffs. Thanks for being with us today, Christian. Now, your research reveals that inflation and recessions will likely have an even greater impact on the global shipping industry this year than they did in 2022. What's behind your projection?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here, Mia. So for 2023, we believe the outlook for shipping, particularly container shipping, that's the sector that we look at, will remain particularly challenging. Recession, on the one hand, will drive demand down, demand for shipping capacity. We already see that now. Liftings have decreased on a year-by-year basis by 10% overall on a global basis, and nearly 25% on a Trans-Pacific Asia to North America basis. At the same time, sort of the easing of the shipping disruptions that we've seen during COVID will release more and more shipping capacity, and that's just the general law of supply and demand. Demand goes down, supply goes up, rates go down. So that's the impact of recession in general. Inflation, on the other hand, will have a double whammy, so to speak, for the shipping industry. Firstly, of course, driving up operational costs, coupled with a decrease in rates and revenues, not good news. And of course, leading to a higher likelihood of labor disputes, disruptions in ports and terminals because of strikes. So pretty challenging outlook for the shipping industry.
And with these labor strikes that we're expecting, I mean, as inflation puts pressure on their disposable incomes, it's expected to increase. How will this labor dissatisfaction in the US and Europe really cause disruptions in global supply chains?
Well, we've seen during COVID, particularly in 2020 and 21, what sort of disruptions in logistical supply chains can mean for consumers in terms of delayed product shipments, etc., etc. And big part of that is, of course, operations within ports, within terminals, within depots. And the more strikes and the more labor disputes you see there, the higher the impact of those disruptions on, of course, also consumer sentiment or consumers.
Now, you deal with thousands of shippers throughout the globe. What's your forecast for the MENA shipping industry in particular this year? Will it face the same challenges as the rest of the world?
I mean, definitely it will be a challenging environment. Overall, the region cannot escape the global economy. But we believe that the region will actually fare better or comparably quite well because of a number of factors. First off, demand hasn't peaked so much during the last 2 years. Hence, capacity buildup wasn't so pronounced within the region. So the impact of now subdued demand on a global scale will not impact the region so much. We already see that now, liftings, so demand within the region hasn't decreased as much, or has even increased in some parts of that region. We also believe that sort of the high reliance on commodities within the region actually acts a little bit as a buffer. High commodity prices sort of keeping the economies doing quite well. And lastly, of course, not the reopenings, but the opening up of the region, coupled with reforms. If you look at Saudi Arabia, for example, also helps within that region.
And tell us about this new buzzword coined by the US this year, friend-shoring, which aims to really relocate supply chains to countries that are friends or allies of the US.
Yeah, so during COVID and all the ensuing disruptions, we've seen that supply chains have become global, but not very resilient anymore. And so the past mandate of just finding the cheapest supplier, the cheapest supply chain combination is not working anymore. And companies, but also countries, are focusing on supply chain resilience, and that means broadening their supplier base, their supply chains, but also focusing on countries that are deemed more stable or more friendly. Hence, the likelihood of trade wars or other restrictions on free trade are lower. And that's sort of what we already see happening now. And of course, we expect this to happen going forward even more in 2023 and 2024.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Container xChange CEO and co-founder Christian Roeloffs.